What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 149 of the Endless Endeavor podcast. And today we're doing another solo episode. I just got back from Costa Rica a couple days ago, and I really want to unpack that trip and share my perspectives on the ceremony, the ayahuasca, all the stuff that went on down there. And if you follow me on Instagram, you probably saw that I wrote a little piece up, just kind of giving a brief one paragraph outline of what I thought. And as usual, being the internet, a lot of people weren't happy about that. You know, ayahuasca for me didn't have this profound spiritual impact on me that a lot of people talk about. And anytime you touch somebody in something that they almost considered to be a religion, you get some backlash. And I had one gentleman write in the comments something along the lines of, you shouldn't be trashing something that's proven to help so many veterans. And that's strange to me, because simply when I say it didn't have these divine healing powers that everybody speaks of, in my opinion, some people interpret that as me trashing on it. If you guys are listening to the show, you know me, and you guys probably know that I'm not going to go down to the jungle and experience something and then bullshit you guys when I get back. I'm going to tell you the truth, what I think of it, what I think it is, how I think it helps people, and really unpack ayahuasca for what I believe it is. Not for what you believe it is, not for what anybody else, the perceptions they hold. I can only speak for myself. Now, I did fly 4,000 miles away and went deep into the jungle and did 2 ceremonies. So I'm not a subject matter expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I feel like I went and did one of the most authentic experiences that you can have with this plant medicine. And now I get to share my opinion, and it holds some validity. So we're going to go into that. Got a couple other things to touch up on here before we go back to my gym and start working my fingers to the bone, getting it ready for our new jiu-jitsu space, which should be opening hopefully next week, right around the corner. But yeah, let's knock this episode out. I'm excited to share this journey with you. So if you aren't aware, I did a podcast close to a year ago now, with a gentleman named Chris Packney. Chris was a fighter pilot in the military, and then he was in law enforcement for 14 years. And go back, look him up. I apologize. I will put the exact episode that it is in the show notes if you guys are interested. But like a lot of military personnel and law enforcement people, he went down a really, really dark path. That dark path was a accumulation of all these different things, injuries, just the stresses of the job. And he was one of the guys he talked about in that episode where he worked where he lived. So you respond to a suicide and you see a young person laying there dead. And then the next week you're in that same park playing Frisbee with your kids. And the stresses of the job just really started to weigh heavy on him. And he decided to just drop his bags and put it all behind him. And he went to the jungle and did an ayahuasca ceremony at the same location where I went. And it changed his life dramatically. It completely shifted his trajectory. And, he dedicated months and months and months of his life to going down to that same retreat to help serve others come to a healing, or find a healing mechanism in regards to using plant medicine. He's a great human being. He was down there with me during my retreat. And I can tell you, he was the reason I went down there. And I'm really glad that I got to share this experience with him. But regardless, he talked about this specific location, which is put on by a gentleman named David Price. And he runs an organization called We the Medicine, which will also be in the show notes below. And I'm here to tell you, We the Medicine, in my opinion, what they are doing is more powerful than the plant medicine itself. And we'll get into that in detail, but my overall assessment of what ayahuasca is, it is just simply a mirror to your inner self. And I think that what David Price is teaching through his organization with meditation, breath work, qigong, and all these different little practices to really find inner peace, find calmness. And he put us through workshops. So I was down there. I was supposed to be down there for, I want to say 8 days at the retreat. I ended up leaving about halfway through. And again, we'll get into that. But while I was there, each day, David would put on, one or two different workshops apart from the plant medicine. And he would teach you different breathing techniques. He had this little thing called a Shruti box, which I called his magical suitcase. And it's this Indian instrument that you pump with your hands, and it pushes air through these different valves that are set to certain tones and certain hertz and different healing frequencies. And I'm telling you guys, when he would play that instrument, that had more of an emotional impact on me than anything that I experienced using the actual ayahuasca itself. I told David, I said, you're the shaman here. You are the one that, in my opinion, is really leading people down an understanding of healing and wellness, and just understanding how you can use nature to help you become both spiritually, mentally, and physically better. The property that we were on was beautiful. It's in this small, let me zoom in here on the map. It is, if you drive, we flew into San Jose, and there's two different ways that you can get to, it's called Florestral Sound of Light. That's what it's called on Google Maps if you want to look exactly where we're at. But basically you drive down the coast, the west coast of Costa Rica, until you get to a little beach town called Dominical, and then you drive inland for about an hour straight into the jungle. Or you can go through the mountains from San Jose Airport, and we went in one way over the mountains, and then we went out along the coast just to kind of get a change of scenery, see a little more of the country. And man, going over those mountains, I guess the locals call it the highway of death. I found that out after the fact, but you reach almost 11,500 feet elevation. So it's super high mountains, but since you're so close to the equator, they don't feel like mountains in the sense that I think of them, with glacial covering and ice pack and snow. This was all jungle, even at the summit. So when we were going over the summit, the taxi driver pulls over and he says, hey, the actual summit is about a 20-minute walk right here. There's the trail. And it was cool that he did that, because we've been traveling and flying for, a day and a half, and just running up to that summit and really pumping your legs full of, just getting the blood flowing while being at 11,500 feet. So the air felt real thin, and it was just kind of hard and taxing on the body, and it felt good. So we knocked that summit out on the way down, and then ran back to the taxi, took the rest of the trip down to Florestral, and then we started the ceremony, or we started the process of the ceremonies, which is literally a whole week where you eat certain foods, and you're supposed to cut out sodium. You're supposed to cut out sugar, a strict vegetarian diet. You're not supposed to have sex for 3 days before ceremony. And when they initially said all these things, and I think we talked about them on last week's episodes that came out before I left, a lot of these things seem kind of strange to me. Now, I can understand if the actual plant medicine on a molecular level interacts with your body differently based on how much sodium you have inside of your body, right? There's obviously a chemistry aspect of what's going on. And these people have been doing this a long time, and I'm just going to listen to them. It's like the contractor in my gym yesterday when we were framing walls. He's like, well, Greg, I think what would make most sense is to, and just whatever, the details of how we were framing the wall. I'm like, bro, I'm not a fucking framer, and you are. Tell me what to do. And that's kind of my mentality. Like, if a person is a subject matter expert, let's let them take lead. Now, if anything feels off or strange and I have to shift fire at a later time, then I'm willing to do that. And we'll get there on this episode. But they said, don't have sex, don't eat this, don't eat that. And you can go and you can Google like pre-ayahuasca ceremony, dietary restrictions, and just life habits that you change leading into ceremony. And I remember thinking that was weird because, again, the nutrition side of it kind of makes sense, but certain things like that, you like not having sex, how can that have an effect on how a drug interacts with your body? So it started to feel a little like religion-y. And I'm not saying that that's wrong. This is their culture. They've been using this for thousands of years. But for me, I'm kind of always a skeptic. And I was thinking, like, why can't you have sex? Now, maybe that's just because I'm a sex addict and it was bothering me that I had to go 3 days without. But yeah, it made me think, like, what's really going on here? So leading into the trip, I was literally wondering, is this plant medicine going to affect me on a spiritual level? Or is this plant medicine simply a drug that the DMT interacts with your brain in a certain way, which a lot of people will attribute to a spiritual experience? Or is it really just a drug? My best friend, Brian Sheely, went down there with me and did the retreat. And I remember we were talking about it the night before we actually did ceremony. I said, do you think when we have this conversation tomorrow, we are going to say ayahuasca is a drug or ayahuasca is a gateway to the divine? And we both kind of laughed because I'm going to vote that it's a drug, and we'll talk again tomorrow. And so when we got to Florestraw, it was very unique. They're all living in a certain way. They're all eating a certain diet. It's a very minimalist way of living. I think one guy told me he had 2 pairs of shorts down there for 4 months. And it's because it's the jungle, right? It's warm. You're just walking around in shorts and flip-flops the whole time. You can go down to the river for your daily bath. And it's just a very, very minimalist approach to living. Very hippie driven, right? And I don't say that with any negative connotations. People can live however they like. But when you think of how a hippie would live, meaning the attire that they wear, just they're always playing music. There was a lot of instruments there. People are barefoot most of the day. You have, a lot of the girls don't shave. And again, this is their approach to life. But it became very apparent early on that this isn't just a place where people go to do ayahuasca. This is a community that is kind of bought off on a certain lifestyle and a certain way of conducting themselves. And it was very peaceful initially, and it was something that I was kind of fascinated by, because it's so different than how anybody chooses to live their life in, I was going to say in America, but it'd be hard to say if there are people that are living similar manners, but it's very foreign to me personally. I've never seen anything like this. And, even after day 1, we went in what was called the sunset fireside ceremony. I think that's what they called it. I might have fucked that up. But basically they have a little temple up on the hill that overlooks the sunset. So you have this beautiful view of the jungle, and they all sing and play music while the sun goes down. And, that's not my scene. I'm a metalhead. I grew up in Pantera and Sepultura mosh pits. So this was very different than anything that I was comfortable with. And I didn't know the songs or the words anyway, so I'm not just going to jump in and become part of the scene. I'm just going to kind of sit back and observe and appreciate it for what it is. And, walking back to our hooches afterwards, one of the ladies that works there, she's like, just so you know, this isn't a cult. So I kind of laughed. I was like, okay. And, I came to a conclusion. I think if you have to say you're not a cult, maybe you need to look in the mirror. And guys, I'm as guilty as that as anyone. My jiu-jitsu academy is almost a cult, right? So one cult leader to another cult leader. I got a kick out of that. But, we did the fireside ceremony, and it was very interesting just seeing how these people live. And some people live there full time. They're having babies there, and that's just their life. And who to say what's right or what's wrong? They're very detached. Chris Packney, again, the guy that initially told me about this place, he lived out there for 4 months. And I think he's actually coming home in the next day or two. And he told me, he goes, this community is very detached from what's going on in the world. They're not glued to their phones. They're not surfing social media. They're living in the moment, and they're living with each other, and they find peace through song and through camaraderie. And I thought it was pretty interesting. So now let's go into exactly how the plant medicine works. If you're familiar with the show, you've probably listened to Tyler Stanaway. He's done 9 ayahuasca ceremonies. He's kind of the endless endeavor ayahuasca guru. And he's really unpacked what they are or what it is rather, and how it affected him and how it affects different people at ceremony. And so as we got closer and closer to leaving for this retreat, I ended up talking to him in depth about it. And it sounds like a lot of people believe that ayahuasca, which is a vine that grows in the jungle, and it grows all over Floristraw, the place we were staying. It's very prevalent in that jungle. The ayahuasca is like a gateway that unlocks your mind to be able to interact with an entity known as Mother Aya. So Mother Aya is basically like this divine entity, this divine energy that comes from the jungle and that is everything. Very avatarish, right? But very powerful. And it's interesting too, because one of the things that they preach down there at Floristraw is like, everything's interconnected. Every plant, every animal, we all share this relationship. And it sounds like ayahuasca kind of brings that out in people and shows that through Mother Aya that we are all divinely interconnected. And I'm not going to say that we're not, but it was very interesting to me to not really feel what everybody else felt when they were doing this. And so going into it, I was wondering, okay, am I going to be touched by the divine, or I'm going to come out of this and just say, that was interesting. When we got down to where they do the temple, right? And they have a bunch of beds laid out, and it's very ceremonial. You have to wear white. There's a bunch of crystals. There's altars. There's music playing, and it's right out of the gates. Again, I just don't know if that environment is necessarily how I would like to utilize ayahuasca. But I was in their house, and I'm playing by their rules, and that's okay. And so we ended up drinking ayahuasca at like 7 p.m. on the first night. And I can tell you, here's the interesting thing, is almost immediately some people got sick. People started throwing up, which they call purging. And people just, there's a handful of people that just curled up on their mats. And it's not that they were sick, right? Because you drink too much alcohol, you take too much drugs, and your body has a reaction. You can get sick, right? Anybody can get sick, but it wasn't just sickness. It was sickness with sadness. And I remember seeing some men and women just have a very, very adverse emotional response. And, a handful of guys that were down there with me came as listeners of the show. And that was really cool. You get to meet some people that were down there. And even within our group of people, the way that it impacted people was dramatically different. And I guess that goes with anything, right? You give someone a shot of vodka, they don't even feel it. Other people will be hammered and throwing up. And that's what happened with ayahuasca. Some people collapsed on their bed, curled up, and I could see in their eyes. I could see by looking in their eyes that they were filled with emotions such as remorse and sadness and shame. And some people bawled and cried for hours. And the truth is, some people, a lady that I went down there with was going through an extremely, extremely difficult personal situation in her life where she lost someone extremely close to her. And I'm not going to air her dirty laundry out on the air, but I remember thinking, like, the moment I met her and she said why she was down there, I just walked up to her. I didn't even know this lady, and I gave her a big hug, and she cried in my arms for like 5 or 10 minutes. It felt like an eternity. And man, it made me realize, like, fuck, dude, I don't have anything sad in my life compared to her. She's going through some shit. My life's pretty damn good. And, that's kind of the energy that I went into ceremony with, that And you guys know me. I've talked about depression on the show before. I've talked about suicidal ideations. I've talked about going through struggles in my life that lead me down paths where I just feel really dark. And through jiu-jitsu and through community building, through this show, through leaving law enforcement behind, I truly believe that I have overcome all that stuff without the assistance of a plant medicine. And this kind of this really reiterated what I've done over the last couple of years. And so as the ceremony continues, it's almost like people are just, I was going to say dropping like flies, but that sounds like that's kind of a derogatory way to say it, but that's the truth. A lot of people were they looked sick and they looked fucked up. And, there was like 10 of us that were part of the Heal the Warrior Soul. And then there was probably another 10 people that just live on the compound or the ranch or whatever you call it. And they partake in ceremonies as they like, it seems like. So there's probably 20 people. And man, a lot of people weren't doing super good. And then the other people, it's like they were there to worship. And, once the medicine or the drug started kicking in, they'd pick up instruments and they'd start singing. And for me, I didn't want to sit there and cry. It's not that I didn't want to. That emotion wasn't present. It didn't present at all. Nor did I want to sit there and bang on a drum and sing to some entity that I don't worship, because I don't worship anything. And I don't know if that's good or bad, but it kind of showed me why I'm like that. And we'll get into that here next. But I don't worship, And so I said, you know what? I need to just remove myself from the temple, and I'm just going to go sit. There was a fire probably 50 meters away. I'm just going to go sit by the fire and kind of go internal and think about life and think about me and think about what's important. And I went out to the fire, and there again, there were some people laying on the ground, kind of moaning or hacking. And I remember thinking in that moment, I'm like, man, this is fucking crushing some people. And I don't feel crushed at all. I feel fucking powerful right now. And it probably took an hour before I started to feel the ayahuasca inside of my body. And the more I felt it, the more powerful I felt. And the more powerful I felt, the more wild I felt. And wild to the point, and this might sound ridiculous, but wild to the point where it's like fucking Jägermeister. When I was 22 years old, you give me 3 shots of Jägermeister, we're fighting someone. And, dude, it just energized me to the point where I felt like a fucking god. Like I felt strong. My body was like, I remember I was just wearing a little pair of like shorty shorts and a sleeveless t-shirt. And my muscles were all bulging and I was like super vascular. And I remember just thinking like, man, you're in the middle of the jungle and you're high on this plant and you're still a motherfucker and you are still unstoppable and you are doing everything that you should be doing in life. If you want to take anything away from the fucking jungle, it's this. Keep fucking doing what you're doing. Stop at nothing. No one or anything can slow you down and just keep getting after it. And it was fun. It was a good high. For those of you that have done mushrooms, I think it's very similar to how the DMT from ayahuasca affects you, like the psilocybin does from mushrooms. And some people will argue that. Some people think it's very different. But to me, there was a familiarity to it. And I've probably done mushrooms less than 10 times in my whole life. So also not a subject matter expert there as well. But it made me feel unstoppable. And it started making me just think about the journey of life, where I wanted to be, where I came from, where I'm going. And I was fired up. And I was like pacing back and forth in front of the fire, just feeling charged. And, the next day, some people are like, man, like Greg was Greg looked unstoppable at the fire. He just looked fired up and strong. And some of the ladies actually thanked me because they said that powerful masculine energy was felt throughout. And, there's probably some people that didn't appreciate it. But the thing is, I removed myself. I got away from the temple. I got away from the altars. And I didn't want to be around any of that shit. I wanted to run off into the jungle. I wanted to disappear into the woods. That's what I told him. I said, I don't want to fucking sing your songs. I want to fight a fucking tiger out in the woods. I want to climb trees. I want to jump off the cliffs that we jumped off earlier. And David Price, again, the guy that runs, that is part of running the program, he's like, Greg, you can't go do that right now. Like, please stay here. Don't run off into the woods. Don't go cliff jumping. And he's right too, because one thing that ayahuasca is, it's very disorienting. I was never out of control. I never reached a point where I didn't know who I was or what I was doing. I was still very grounded in reality, but when you turn the lights off and you walk out into the woods, which I did a couple times, and we're not talking far, I'm talking 25 yards into the woods, man, suddenly you're immersed in darkness, and it's almost like you don't know where you're at, even though you just walked 25 meters from where you were previously standing. Very easy to understand where you're at logically, but in the moment, it's very disorienting. So I can see why they don't want people wandering off into the woods. But again, like, I tried to make myself feel fear. And I did. I walked off into the woods just very close to where everybody's at and turned my lights off and just sat there and was like, fuck, dude, feel lost. Nope. Nothing felt out of place or nerve wracking or anything. And, and then it started raining and thundering and lightning and like this it was like a monsoon rain that hit. But it's the jungle. It's 80 degrees out. Like, I welcomed that. I live in Seattle where it's cold and raining year fucking round. So to have some rain, but it still felt tropical, man, I just looked up into the sky and was like, fucking give it to me, universe. Like, I want to stand in the eye of the storm right now. I want you to give me everything you fucking got. All the thunder, all the lightning, all the rain. I want to fucking just stand out here and take it all in and feel fucking powerful and feel unstoppable. And, man, that's what I did for hours. And, in that time, everybody else went inside because, I don't know, I guess people don't like torrential downpours and a bunch of thunder and lightning, except for two other men. And those were the guys that I really connected with on this trip. Obviously Brian, who has been my best friend since I was 10. And then Johnny, Johnny is a Guns and Geese attendee. He came to our course like a year or two ago, and he decided to do this too. And he's a fucking stud, young stud, jiu-jitsu guy, just overall savage. And the three of us weren't drawn to singing songs in the temple. We were drawn to fucking letting the elements of the jungle give us everything that it had. But here's the funny part. We didn't know that at the time. It's not like the three of us were going to go do this thing together. The next day we talked about it, and we all kind of went into our own little place. And that was how we experienced ayahuasca. Now, and I got really, really high that night. And I say high because, in my opinion, it is a drug. And the drug gets you really high. And when you're really high, one very interesting thing about this drug is it makes you look at yourself and strip off all of the different layers. This is why I think a lot of people think it is this divine entity, because most people don't want to show up and look at themselves right in the fucking mirror and say, who am I? What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? Do I feel the shame? If I feel the shame, why? Where's the root of that? If I feel this fear, why do I feel this fear? Why am I living in a diminished state? It really makes you look at yourself. And guys, if you look at yourself and you don't like what you see, I think that is where the ayahuasca crushes you. And it just shows you exactly every one of your shortcomings and all of the different aspects of your life that you are coming up short on. And if you're out in the jungle high as fuck thinking about all the things that you are failing at, that's going to be a rough fucking night. And that's why some people had very, very rough nights. For me, it was the opposite, because I would look up into the fucking monsoon and just say, fucking like, what am I here for? And what is my fucking mission in life? And I just kept getting the same message over and over and over. And it's like, your mission is to be a fucking wild animal, to be a fucking Viking, and to fucking go to all four corners of the earth and live as hard as you fucking want. Chase adventure, keep chasing love, keep chasing fitness, keep chasing wild. And I was like, yes, dude. And I was so fired up. I was like, Mother Aya, because everyone's saying like Mother Aya, this divine entity, will interact with you once you're in the medicine, they called it. Once you're sitting with Aya in the medicine, that's when she will come and interact with you. And I've had a lot of people that I hold a ton of respect for say the same thing to me. And there was no entity showing up. It was just me and my own thoughts. And I'm like, where the fuck are you? Where are you? Fucking show yourself. Show yourself and crush me like you're crushing everybody else. I want you to come here right now and squish me like a fucking bug. Do it. I want to get fucking squished. I am ready for the fight of my fucking life. I want you to fucking give it to me. So where are you at? Like fired up. I wasn't angry. I was just fired up. And, man, the same message just kept resonating. You don't need to fight. You don't need to get crushed. You don't need to fucking dig deep into your shame. You don't need to fall over and cry about what happened when you were a kid. All that shit is in the fucking past. It doesn't matter. And you're on the path to crushing, and that's what matters. And then I'd get fired up again. It's like this crazy cycle. And for those of you that have never done, that don't utilize any type of drugs, marijuana, mushrooms, this might sound like crazy drug shit, and maybe it is, right? But it was empowering. And it forces you to just analyze the different things inside of your life on a level that you don't do on a normal, regular basis. So, and we ended up doing that until I think we were up that night until 5 a.m. And I drank 2 cups that night. And, me and Brian talked around the fire off and on throughout the night. And, one thing that was a little troubling is they say, oh, you can't talk. Like ayahuasca is to go internal. And if ayahuasca is to go internal, interacting with other people, what that does is that takes them out of their journey, and that disallows them to do that reflection, that deep self-reflection that I was just talking about. And so I think that it can be a good tool. It can be a great tool for that self-reflection. But I also think human beings interacting with each other and sharing perspectives and sharing thoughts and ideas, I think that can be equally as powerful. Because if this plant medicine unlocks something in your brain to just go deep, maybe that part of your brain, you can unlock it and go deep with someone else. And then you can share those deep perspectives and those deep understandings with each other. And there's a lot of potential for growth there. Me and Sheila have been friends since we were little boys. And the conversations that we had that night were fucking powerful. And it was that deep, deep self-reflection while simultaneously sharing it with someone close to you. And I think that's a good thing. I really enjoyed that. And the next day that we revisited some of the topics, and we're still like, man, those were good realizations to come to. One of us, or each of us, came to the same realization on night one that we didn't talk about so much that night, but the next day we did. And that's like, I'm not here to worship anyone or anything but me. And I know that sounds egotistical and it sounds arrogant, but I honestly believe that most human beings want to worship something externally. They want to worship the divine energy of the jungle. They want to worship a god. They want to feel small and they want to feel like there is something greater. And it was very interesting that me and Brian came to the same conclusions without talking about it much that night, is that, man, the real power is derived once you look in the mirror and worship that person. When you look in the mirror and you see that person looking back at you and you say, fuck yes, that's the motherfucker I want to be, standing right there. and the ayahuasca made us both feel that. And so maybe the ayahuasca just kind of shines a spotlight on how you're hardwired to assess yourself, how you're hardwired to worship or to look to other entities as being divine or being powerful, or maybe it just supports you thinking that of yourself. And I remember thinking that. I'm like, you know what? It doesn't matter if it's Jesus Christ. It doesn't matter if it's Mother Aya. I am equally as valuable, as important, and I hold the same power to change the motherfucking universe just like any other entity that's ever come and gone or exist in infinite. And man, I feel fucking good about that. I feel like that's a powerful position to hold. Now, I don't know if it's right or wrong, and nobody knows if their belief systems are right or wrong either. But when you look at yourself as someone that you believe is divine and powerful and unstoppable, nothing bad's going to come from that. You know, I shouldn't say nothing bad. You push too far and you become some crazy fucking cult leader. That's when shit gets weird. And then you want to start fucking other men's wives and shit. But if you can maintain some fucking clarity and some self-control and some discipline and some love, if you feel like you are the most divine, powerful fucking creature in your existence, you become undeniable. You become unstoppable. And that was my takeaway from ayahuasca. And so, you know, we woke up the next day and we hashed out a lot of the stuff. We did what's called integration. And during integration, everybody sits in a circle. And I said, you know what? Since the second it touched my lips, I thought it was delicious and I just wanted more. Like there was no urge to throw up. The only urge was to grab the shaman's jug and chug the rest of it. Like, let's fucking go. Let's get fucking crazy right from the get-go. And then I told the guy that owns Floristral, I was like, listen, because they started saying like, we're family and we're all in this together. And it was like, no, I'm an outsider. That's very clear. I'm very different than most of you guys. And that's not good or bad. That's just what it is. And I said, listen, I felt like last night I was on a Viking fucking voyage and my fucking ship randomly crashed onto the shores of Costa Rica and my tribe bumped into your tribe. And we were able to peacefully spend a night together doing something crazy and something powerful. But I'm the visitor and I'm the outsider. And I'm going to get back on my boat and I'm going to fucking sail home soon. And I told one of the shaman, I said, grab your little magical suitcase, the Shruti box it's called, and get on my fucking boat, dude, because you're coming back to Norway with me. And I just felt like Ragnar on some fucking voyage, and it was cool. And so we all shared kind of like how the night made us feel and what we got out of it. And I shared exactly what I just spent the last 39 minutes talking about. And then we chilled out the rest of the day. You know, I think we did some breathwork seminars and a Qigong workshop down at the river, like learning to channel the energy of nature. And the next day, we go into ceremony number 2. Now, ceremony number 2 was a lot bigger. There's probably 30 people attending, but only eight to 10 were part of our group. So it was our group, which was Heal the Warrior Soul. And then there was like 20 other people. Again, not my land, not my fucking, I'm not running the show here. But I remember thinking like, man, if I was doing a retreat with guys that were here as veterans and police officers and first responders, I think I might make it a little more intimate as opposed to like this giant, it almost feels like a party. Because all the people that live there, so that would be 20 people that were doing the ayahuasca together, they just want to sing songs the whole night together. And for people that are there to heal, I want to be away from that stuff. Or people that are not just there to heal, but there to self-reflect, which I guess is almost one and the same as healing. And it ended up taking, ceremony is supposed to start at 7 and it started at 9. And it was running about 2 hours late. And the thing is, it's a fucking hippie community out in the jungle. Time is not of the utmost importance. And I wasn't upset about that, but I remember just thinking like, fuck man, like I've been laying here for 2 hours waiting for the ceremony to start. And then when it started, the vibe was just a little off. It wasn't the same vibe as the first night. And in full transparency, guys, there's a couple things said, a couple things transpired leading into ceremony that I just wasn't a fan of. I didn't think that the way a couple people were treated and the way that some people talk to each other, it wasn't the end of the world. It wasn't something worth getting in a fight over. But I remember just thinking, man, this isn't my people. This isn't, I live my life in a very different manner than these people live their life. And that's okay, right? If we were all if everyone was Greg Anderson in the world, it'd be a pretty boring fucking place. So I wasn't upset, but I just knew, man, something feels off tonight. And then and then a couple things transpired that I didn't think was acceptable. And I just said, you know what? Like, I need to remove myself from this situation. And it's no hard feelings. Nobody necessarily did anything egregious. I just came to the conclusion that I don't think I want to be part of this anymore. And if you're, if this is something that you were considering doing, don't let this necessarily be something that would dissuade you from going. I'll tell you, a big motivating factor for me is, my new gym just got finished. The CrossFit side got finished, and there's a ton of work to do renovating the jiu-jitsu side. And I could log in because there was a spot on the ranch that gets Wi-Fi, and I could log into my gym security camera footage. And one night I was watching Angie and my wife Jenny clean up everything, getting it ready for the renovation. And it's like, fuck, man, the people that are closest to me are taking care of my dream while I'm out in the jungle doing drugs, getting high. This isn't for me anymore. So it wasn't just the place. That first night, it was reiterated that you're powerful, that you're doing great, you're on the right path. And I remember thinking the next day, like, maybe it's time to go home because I got a lot of shit to do. And there's a good chance that during the start of ceremony 2, that played a role in it. That I'd kind of already come to the conclusion that this is what ayahuasca is. This is what it did for me. And I don't know if I need more of it in my life. And so going into ceremony 2, I was already kind of holding that mindset. And then after a couple little things that just kind of rubbed me the wrong way, I said, you know what, I'm done here. And no hard feelings. This is not my ranch. This is not my temple. This is not my ceremony. But as a man, I've decided that it's time for me to go. And I'd already drank ayahuasca that night too. So I was already what they call in the medicine. I was already very high. And it was like just pushing rewind and play again from night 1. Where it was just like, dude, I feel unstoppable. I feel wild. I feel like I'm fucking winning. I feel like I need to go home and crush and write my fucking book and build my gym and do all the things that I am motivated to do right now. You don't need the jungle anymore. You need to crush fucking life. And, a couple guys came up and like, hey, Greg, you got to come back to ceremony. You can't just leave in the middle. It's kind of a violation of protocol. And, very respectfully, I just said, hey, I've come to the conclusion of what I need. And that's not for me anymore. So I'm just going to call the night. I'm going to go to bed. In the morning, I will get up and I will leave and I will be done. And that's ultimately what ended up happening. Now, again, my buddy Brian and Johnny, very, very similar conclusions were drawn that night. And the three of us decided the next morning, man, let's just go to Hako. Let's just drive out to the beach town of Hako, crash at a resort for a day or two and rebook our flights. And let's get out of Costa Rica for now. Don't misinterpret that as there's any bad taste in my mouth, or I didn't love the journey, or I didn't appreciate Florastraw, or especially David Price. David Price and Chris Packney, the two guys that put this together, like, they are homies for life. Those are guys that have just shown me a side of who I am, apart from the ayahuasca, that I will never forget, and that I hold an extreme amount of respect for them. So again, if this is something that you're considering, don't take me leaving as a negative thing. I just realized, they say Mother Aya is going to show you who you are and what you need. If I was shown anything, it was you're on the right path, and get home to your fucking girls and let's make life keep happening. Let's keep putting one foot in front of the other and getting after what we need to get after. But if I could go back and not do the journey, I wouldn't do that either. I needed this. I got a lot out of this. I learned a lot about myself, and it really reiterated things that I already believed, but now I feel like I know. And so for the people that were upset with me for saying, like, I didn't feel any divine healing take place, I don't feel like it's the ayahuasca is the healing modality that people always claim that it is. But then the little caveat on that I even said in my write-up, I said, or maybe I'm just not in a place in life where I need immense healing right now. And that's okay. In fact, that's probably good, right? And so I ended up leaving, and I don't think I need ayahuasca in my life anymore. If, life is peaks and valleys. There's an ebb and flow of everything that we are and everything that we do. And if life throws some really fucking hard circumstances at me and I find myself in the clutches of depression and feeling like I'm in despair again, maybe I will go revisit it. Maybe at that point it can give me something that I need. But where I'm at right now, I don't fucking need it. And that was reiterated to me at 2 different ceremonies. And I decided to walk away. And I'm happy with that. Now, I will tell you this. If I ever do decide to revisit ayahuasca, one thing that I was thinking, and this is good, right? Like, you go, you experience something, take what you like and leave what you don't like. What I think would be a good way to run ceremony is offer 2 different locations within the ceremonial space. Now, they have to have oversight on people. I get that, for safety, for protocol. So when I said I'm just going up to my room and going to bed, I can understand why some people were like, hey, that's not a good idea. We would like you to stay. And me being unreasonable once my mind is made up, I said no, and I'm going to go to bed and you can find me at my hooch. But I think a good way to do it would be to have a social setting and a setting where you get to go internal. So have a space where you can, if you want to reflect on you, you can reflect on you. And if you want to reflect outward and share with people, man, I think that would be good too. Now there'll probably be people listening like, that's not what the plant medicine is for, blah, blah, blah. Like, maybe, right? But me and Brian both had a great night having conversations on and off. And if that benefits people and people appreciate that, then maybe make a space for it. And so who knows? Maybe I'll fucking have it at my property someday. We ended up leaving the next day as I determined. And, I even texted my wife when I was still under the medicine and said, hey, I walked out of ceremony 2 and I'm going to be coming home. And she goes, don't jump to any conclusions. When you wake up in the morning, reassess how you feel, and then make a decision from there. And as soon as I woke up, I knew it was still time to go. I can't disrespect the ceremonial space by walking out of it and then going back into a third ceremony. Like, I'm not necessarily saying I burned a bridge, but that put me to the point of no return. Once I did that, it's fucking time to move on. And we went up to Hako. We stayed at the Marriott on the beach, ate good food, had some fucking fun, visited the city. I actually bought a 5-acre plot of land in Hako when I was 23 years old. And it's because I was making a fuckload of money in Ramadi, Iraq as a DOD contractor. And one of my buddies is like, hey, you want to go in on a piece of property in Costa Rica? I said, yeah, why not? And I bought that in 2004 and never saw it until last week. So that was a cool little part of the journey. I got to finally go up to my property in Hako and get eyes on and just stand there and take it all in. And maybe I'll never see it again. I don't know. Or maybe I'll fucking do something cool there. I know a lot of jiu-jitsu guys are going down to Costa Rica and doing different things down there. The Rotolo brothers have something there, I believe. I could be wrong. And then there's different jiu-jitsu retreats and stuff. So who knows? Maybe jiu-jitsu brings me back to Costa Rica. I know a couple of my buddies want to go back, and we're talking about a follow-on trip that has nothing to do with plant medicine, but just go enjoy more of the culture. And the Costa Rican people are fucking cool. And so I enjoyed it. I wouldn't change anything about the journey. I think I got what I needed out of it, and that's why I ended early. But guys, if ayahuasca saved your life, or it changed your perspective, or it helped you overcome addiction, or helped you overcome depression, don't allow me saying that I don't think that it did anything extremely extravagant or extremely important for me. Don't allow that to diminish what it did for you. All right. Like it's not an absolute, or it's not like it's going to work for this person, so it has to work for the next person. Nothing in life is absolutes. I say that almost daily when I'm teaching jiu-jitsu. Nothing I will teach you is an absolute, because what works for one person won't work for the next, and vice versa. And I think ayahuasca is the same. So if you have any questions or any perspectives on that, feel free to hit me up on Instagram. Man, one thing I do want to put out today is just stop sending me reels and memes on Instagram, please. And I say that with utmost respect, because I know people probably send me stuff thinking that I'll enjoy watching it, but I don't fucking care. Like, I want to interact with people. So if you want to write me something and I see that you have a question or a perspective, man, that's what social media is for. But my whole fucking inbox is filled with so-and-so sent you a reel. So-and-so sent you a reel. So-and-so sent you a reel. Stop sending me your fucking reels. I don't even watch them. I just delete them. And it's because I don't have enough time in the day to watch all the reels that people send me. I don't fucking care. And I probably sound like a dick now, but fucking use that platform to interact with people. And if you have homies that you want to send reels to, send reels to them. But I don't think sending reels to strangers does any good for either side. So please fucking write me, ask me stuff, interact with me as a human being, but I don't want your memes and your reels, respectfully, while being a dick simultaneously. Yeah, other than that, I just wanted to wrap up today's episode. I got a lot of people, because I was gone for 2 weeks, I had a lot of people reaching out to me saying, hey, what's your opinion on the Henner Gracie situation? Excuse me. And if you're not a jiu-jitsu guy or gal, you probably don't even know what the fuck I'm talking about. But basically, there was a jiu-jitsu coach in Southern California that was rolling with a student, and ultimately the student broke his neck. And sustained a catastrophic injury. And it was a big story in the jiu-jitsu world. And that's why a lot of people reached out to me asking for my perspectives. So now that I'm home, I'm going to share it. Henry Gracie was an expert. He testified as an expert witness. And, anyone that's familiar with how the judicial system works, when you have a case and it can be about literally anything, the prosecution or the defense can call on expert testimony and bring people in to talk about what happened, their opinion on it, what they think went right, what they think went wrong, what could have done better, all that stuff. And that's what expert witness testimony is for. It allows the jury to get a little bit of feedback from somebody inside of that industry, somebody that's a professional inside of that space. So they called on Henry Gracie to testify as an expert witness when the student was suing the instructor. And, Henry Gracie did what Henry Gracie does, and he spewed a bunch of fucking bullshit that, and you can say whatever you fucking want, but my opinion on what he did is fuck him. All right. You only have to watch the video to know that it was simply an accident. And if anybody watches that video and says otherwise, I would love to fucking hear. I would love to have that conversation with you. He went for a rolling back take, which is something Leo Vieira. That's who my black belt is under. All right. My black belt's from Leo Vieira and Joao Assis. Leo Vieira invented that move. He's done it a million times. And as this guy went for a rolling back take, the guy's neck got pinched and it broke his spine. And it's fucked, man. It's fucked. I'm not going to diminish what a tragedy it was or how terrible of an incident it was. But at the same time, there was no malice. There was no intent. And Henry Gracie used this as an opportunity to really, really just point out every single little thing that he thought was wrong. And guys, one thing he said, he's like, well, that student was never taught that. So he was using a move against his student that wasn't taught to that student previously. So he didn't know how to defend it. And it's like, motherfucker, as a black belt, okay, as a fucking black belt with 200 students, I teach people stuff nightly. And I don't know who was at what class. I don't take inventory. So out of my 200 fucking students, I will say, okay, well, tonight I'm rolling with 7, and 7's been here 5 years, and he's attended these classes, and I've shown him these moves. So now he knows what to do and what not to do from these specific situations, but he missed last week's inverted De La Hiva class. So I can't do that with him. Like, shut the fuck up. You know you're full of shit. You know that's a crock of shit. Because when you roll, you don't have some matrix that you go to based on who the other person is or what you've taught them. Your jiu-jitsu is your jiu-jitsu, and it comes alive as you roll. And you don't know what you're going to do next. A lot of times your jiu-jitsu just happens because you're reacting. Somebody else gets a say in how rolls play out. So for any motherfucker to be like, oh, yeah, you haven't taught him that, so you can't use that against him. That's the stupidest shit I've ever heard in my life. Everybody I know in the jiu-jitsu space is disgusted with Henry Gracie. He got paid $125,000 to be an expert witness. And I'm not saying he did it for the money, because if you're going to be an expert witness, they're going to pay you, get your money, right? But it's what he said that I have a problem with. And, you know, he always tries to act like he's taking the high road. And he did it here too. Like, aren't coaches responsible for the care of their students? And if you don't think they are, please share with me what you think they are there to do. And it's like, you motherfucker, everybody knows that a coach is there to take care of their students. I also know in combat arts, people get hurt sometimes. And again, go watch the video, and that's what happened. And it was unfortunate. But, for someone that gives out blue belts online, doesn't surprise me that he fucking turns his back on jiu-jitsu for money. Fuck you. That's where I'm at with him. And, I seen him fuck over my buddy Greg Lappin as well in his GST course because it's the Henner show. And he thinks he's the absolute to everything. He was never even a fucking cop. And he's telling every cop in America what they need to do and what they shouldn't do. And, that kind of personality just rubs me the wrong way. And so enough on that. I'm beating a dead horse. But, man, jiu-jitsu people, stick together. Don't cast stones. Don't try and tear the community down. Don't try and fucking string people up for making mistakes. And if you do that, the jiu-jitsu community is going to turn on you. And that's what we're doing to Henner. Well, guys, that puts us right at an hour. There's some other things that we could talk about, but I think we'll save them for next week. I got a couple good guests coming up, and the next couple weeks are going to be people. We're kind of going back to our roots with the Endless Endeavor, and we're going to do a couple episodes based on freedom, because there's 2 local businesses that are still getting fucked over because of the COVID mandates. They didn't follow the COVID mandates, and these motherfuckers inside of government. And because I'm really close with one of them that's fighting this battle. You didn't require masks when we told you to. And he went to court on it. And he said he brought all this documentation to show that the mask actually didn't work. Right. And you know what he was told? This was at the court hearing. He was told, we're not here to discuss the validity of masks. We're here to discuss if you disobeyed orders. Fuck you. Keep pushing people. I've been saying it for years. Keep pushing people. Because what the government is saying by that statement is, it doesn't matter if we're right or wrong about stuff. That's not what we're here to discuss, if we are right or wrong. We're here to discuss if you disobeyed us or not. So the government will admit, even when they're wrong and they're telling you to do things that you shouldn't be doing, if they tell you to do them, you still better fucking do them, or we're going to ruin your livelihood. So yeah, a couple episodes coming up on that. Hopefully we can get those guys and gals slotted over the next week or two, and just keep bringing you guys cool, good content with fucking patriots, people trying to get stronger, people trying to become better, people becoming motherfuckers. Because as we all know, no one is coming to save you.